Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex. And today I wanted to do a new build for Loki because I think that the character has made a fantastic and fascinating transformation with his new uniform, and I am a lot more comfortable with the character now. I recently got his uniform to Mythic, so I'm able to see the character at a very high, close to his peak performance and abilities, and so I can give you guys a more accurate representation of the maximum output for your Loki, as well as discussing how some pretty minor changes have actually made a huge difference to how you should build your Loki if you want to, develop this character to tier 2 and mythic the uniform and stuff like that. So like we did for the new build uniform for Thor, if you haven't checked out that video already, you should. I'm first going to talk about the Uru and the ISO and the custom gear, and then I'm going to move over into the skill rotation, but they're kind of one in the same. I want to briefly talk about the skill changes that were made to Loki's abilities with his new uniform, which have a big impact on the character and the changes to his build. So keep in mind, if you have the old versions of Loki's uniform, there's really not much to change about the build. It's really about the new uniform where things start to develop a little bit more. And the primary reason for that is that his second skill, Deception, now has a half iframe. It's interesting because it's not a full iframe. If it's not an iframe at all, if you're next to your enemy. If you are far away from the enemy, then he will teleport, and that teleport is now a full iframe. So it's kind of an interesting positional or position-based iframe that I actually really enjoy using, and I think it makes his kit a lot stronger and more aggressive. In addition to that, his fourth skill, Astral Projection, now casts a lot faster, and it's a much larger AoE. It deals more damage, so it's more reliable. Also, his clones now deal more damage. They attack faster, they attack more times per cast, and they just basically do more damage overall. So those three things combined have allowed Loki to leapfrog among his peers and really launch himself into one of the higher DPS characters in the game. In addition to that, he's naturally suited for the Supergiant World Boss Ultimate because she takes full damage from clones, and he is a contender, maybe not the champion, but definitely a contender for Universal Villain Extreme Alliance Battle. So those two things with his new uniform have really been the kind of highlight of the character. As far as the new gear setup goes, I think if you didn't already build your Loki super offensively, now is the time to do so. Keep in mind that any crit rate or crit damage stats that you add to your Loki will not apply to his clones, to the summons. Cold damage will also not apply. Essentially, the only thing that's going to apply is your energy attack stat. So getting all attack or energy attack ISO 8 will be great for him. Energy attack Uru will be great for him. And if you can give him a CTP that has all attack, that would be kind of the bee's knees. That would be the full house, as it were. If you can't do that, however, you can still build, or if you want to, in addition, you can still build his gear and his ISO and his obelisk for crit damage and crit rate, because those things will apply to all of Loki's skills except for the clone. So just keep that in mind. I did do testing with Loki. I gave him almost 75% crit rate, and I ran multiple instances of Supergiant World Boss, and his clones did not crit once, which is either next to impossible, or it just means that his clones do not crit ever. So with that in mind, you want to build for all attack or energy attack first, and then if you want to just boost Loki's damage, which will still help because his skills do quite a bit of damage now, you can build him as I did with crit damage. The damage proc obelisk is not as good as you might think because of the fact that the clones don't benefit from the damage proc. If you do have a damage proc, I would recommend to try and get it on the fourth skill, Astral Projection. It's the highest damage skill. But otherwise, you can safely go with an invincibility obelisk, and it might be better to, for the two things that I mentioned, Loki is now quite good at, Supergiant World Boss Ultimate and Extreme Alliance Battle, but we'll get into that in a minute. As far as the ISO 8 bonus goes, you definitely want to go for something like Power of Angry Hulk or Overdrive. I don't think the attack speed really helps. It doesn't help the clones as well. So many things don't help the clones, but it will help Loki, and attack speed, as you'll see, may matter to Loki, especially when you're trying to chain that fourth skill into other skills. For any ISO set that has chaotics attached to it, you want to make sure that they have energy attack or all attack on as many, if all of them, as possible, because that will be doubly good for Loki. It will boost his attack for his stats and his skills, but it will also boost the damage of his clones. Finally, for his Uru, you can definitely go with crit rate and crit damage in addition to energy attack, as I did. If you want to go more defensively, you could build your Loki with dodge. Just keep in mind that any of those stats that you're going to add will not apply to his clones, aside from the energy attack one. So there you can kind of just mix and match for whether you want your Loki to last longer or whether you want his other 4 skills to deal more damage. Finally, I want to give you guys a real scenario for Loki's new skill rotation, because this is the most fascinating part to me and the part that I enjoy the most. I think that Loki's uniform really reinvigorates the character, and I have a lot of fun playing as him because his skills just feel so much more fluid and his rotation is so buttery smooth. So I'm going to take him into Extreme Alliance battle. Keep in mind that for this specific game mode, you're going to have a much more difficulty keeping Loki alive because the Frost Beast in this stage uses Pierce attacks. The Pierce will go through Loki's barrier. It will not go through Loki's invincibility obelisk if you have a shield. So that's why I mentioned that the invincibility is very good for Loki. But you have to just basically dodge and iframe the beast. Otherwise, when you don't have the invincibility proc on, or you don't have it at all, otherwise he will kill you, and I have died multiple times. But we're going to go ahead and use this team up here because it has the most bonuses, and I'm going to show you guys the rotation that I'm using for Loki. I'm playing with a controller, as you guys know. Essentially, what rotation we're going to be doing today, we're going to do 5-3, 1-4-2, and there's going to be a bit of pausing in between that rotation. There will be pausing at other times during the rotation because I'm going to be anticipating the meteors or the Frost Beast. This day is particularly difficult for Loki because you must dodge the Frost Beast because of the Pierce, but you also need to dodge the meteors if you want to get a good score. To date, my best score is around 280,000, so I think with a very well geared Loki and very good energy attack and maybe a damage proc, you could break 300,000, which is competing with an above average Dormammu. So keep that in mind, he's pretty much up there. But we're going to get started here. We're going to immediately switch 5 into 3. Now we're going to do 1, but then we're going to kite a little bit. We're going to do 4, but there, we do 2 to get out of the meteor that's at our feet. And you want to do that because otherwise you're going to get hit by the meteor, as I just did. But you want to also make sure that you're not close to the Frost Beast. You guys see the pierce damage there? Killing me. You want to make sure that you're not close to the Frost Beast, because if I'm close to the Frost Beast and I press the 4th skill and the 2nd skill, there's no iframe, and then I can get hit by a meteor. So if you watch it again at full speed, we do 5 and 3 and then 1, and then we do 4, but then we can immediately iframe. And see, that iframe there actually protected me from that first lunge of the Frost Beast. And you'll actually see that as you do the rotation a little bit more, that there, I was too close to the Frost Beast. I didn't get the iframe off, which is worse for my survivability. But you will start to notice that for Loki specifically, and I was too close to the robots, so I lost it again. Or I didn't get the iframe, actually. But you'll notice for Loki that his skills actually have a bit of an awkward cooldown. He doesn't actually get his 5th skill off cooldown first. And so you may end up doing the 3rd skill before the 5th skill is ready again. So you can also do 5-3-1 or 3-1-5, something like that. But there is essentially what you want to do with 4 and 2. And that's what I find so entertaining about Loki's skill rotation, is that I can wind up his 4th skill and then immediately iframe into the beast with that 2nd skill. And that way, well, I died, but that way I would avoid damage. I just want to show you guys the rotation one more time without too much talking on my part, so you guys can get a better feel for how you're going to have to be dodging both the Frost Beast and the meteors, because I do find Loki's rotation to be very fun to play, and although it's challenging, I really like using his skills in tandem. And you'll see sometimes that I cancel the 4th skill and I dodge the meteors with a different skill, not with the, got in the corner here, not with the 2nd skill. You can also dodge it with the 5th skill or the 3rd skill if you have it off cooldown, provided that you know, you see a meteor coming down on you, because you also don't want to jump back into a meteor like that, and you don't want to be too close to the Frost Beast, because otherwise Loki's just going to stand there and you're not going to get that iframe out of the second skill. But I do want to say that despite a lot of missteps with character design, I do really like the fact that Loki has kind of a conditional iframe. And I wish that more characters had this, and that fewer characters had, you know, just guaranteed iframes, because it just makes it a lot more boring to play, and this is a lot more fun to play. And I'm, you know, dying here, but it's still really fun. See, I was too close. You also have to be careful to not be close to too many of, or any of the robots, because if you're close to any of the robots, any of the Ultron minions, you will, yeah, see, you'll also just target them. You want to make sure you're targeting the Frost Beast. Yeah, see, I got too close that time. That was my bad. You want to make sure you're also targeting the Frost Beast. You also want to try and use your team-up skill pretty early on, because it does good damage. It's the 4th skill. But it's also the team-up where you get Hela and Thanos. That's a pretty good example of how we skill cancel the 4th skill. Yeah, as long as you're targeting the Frost Beast, it makes that skill cancel a lot smoother. And as long as you're not too close to the Frost Beast, you will be out of his way for taking damage. Uh-oh. Just died. Speaking of taking damage, I probably could have done better than 277 if I'd stayed alive. Oh well. So that is my new build for Loki. Let me know what you think of the gear, ISO, and obelisk recommendations and CTP recommendations. Let me know what you think of the skill rotation, if you like it, or if you have another one that's better for him, given that second skill kind of iframe, etc. Subscribe if you're enjoying the content, and of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.